Chapter 7. Michael was exhausted the next day. Otis had prowled around and yowled all night. At one point in the middle of the night, Michael had woken just in time to see Otis walk into his room and sniff around. Michael blinked, blurry-eyed, and wondered if the kitten might be looking for something. He got out of bed to refill his food dish and give him fresh water. He tried to pet him, but Otis wouldn't stay still. Finally, Michael went back to his room, closed the door, and turned on a fan to drown out the mournful meows. Somehow, Mia slept right through the noise. In the morning, she was bright-eyed and happy to see Otis. Michael couldn't believe it. He felt like he could hardly hold his head up. "Don't forget, we have to make flyers this afternoon," Michael reminded Mia. Mia stuck out her bottom lip, pouting. "You know we have to find him a home," Michael said. He and Mia had talked it out through the day before, after Cameron had left. If they agreed to make the flyers, it would give them more time to convince Mom that they should keep Otis. But now, Michael was starting to think that maybe the kitten needed a different home, a home of his own where he could yowl all night at somebody else. Otis really needs a forever home, and I really need a full night's sleep," Mom said as she sat down at the table. "I'm starting to think Peter knew something when he named him after Otis Redding," Dad said from the kitchen doorway. "That cat sure can sing the blues." "Cats are nocturnal," Mia bit into her bagel. "In the wild, they hunt at night and sleep during the day. But I read that most house cats learn to sleep when their families do." "Not Otis," Michael grumbled. "Last night he woke me up 3 times. Michael looked over at Otis, who was snoozing on his bed by the sofa. Dad took a gulp of coffee. "If this keeps up, we're all going to be singing the blues." After school, Mia and Michael snacked on brownies while they worked on the flyer. They used a picture of Otis playing with a red string. His yellow eyes were bright and sparkly, and he almost looked like he was smiling. Michael didn't think anyone would ever believe that the happy little kitten in the picture could much such a loud, sad meow. "Meet Otis." Michael read the poster headline out loud. "He needs a loving home. Will you adopt him?" Underneath that, he typed "Call the Batellis" and put in their phone number. "It seems short," Mia said. "Shouldn't we tell more about him?" "I think this is good for now. I bet we'll get lots of calls," said Michael. "Then we picked the best family." If the Batellis weren't keeping him, Michael wasn't going to let Otis go to just any home. He wanted to ask a lot of questions. He wanted to make sure that Otis's new owner was the perfect match for him. He printed out 20 flyers on plain white paper, typing paper. "We have hung them on lamp posts," Mia said. "And in shop windows," Michael added. "Mr. Lee's grocery, Mrs. Lopez's bakery, the drugstore, and the bagel shop on the corner." They all had bulletin boards where people advertised things like concerts or classes or yard sales. Why not a cute little kitten? Before they left the apartment, Michael and Mia stopped by the windowsill where Otis was snoozing. He barely lifted his head as they gave him a quick scratch under his chin. He squinted his eyes contently. That feels nice. I feel safe here. I can keep sleeping." They walked around the neighborhood carrying the flyers and a roll of tape. Mia held each flyer in place, and Michael taped it up. As they passed people on the sidewalk, Michael wondered if any of them would want to adopt Otis. The more people he saw, the more he worried. How could he know what questions to ask when people came to look at Otis? How would he know for sure that Otis was going to a good home? That night, Michael lay in bed reading, even though he had music playing on his iPod. He couldn't hear Otis starting up his evening yowl. It was funny how the kitten's pitiful meows seemed to rise and fall in time with the music. The meows grew louder and sooner. Michael looked up to see Otis pushing his head through the partly open door. Otis stuck his pink nose in the air and sniffed around. He tilted his head to one side. He flicked his fluffy orange ear and padded over to Michael's iPad and speakers. He batted the iPod with his paw. He looked right at Michael and yowled. "What is it, Otis?" Michael asked. "What's going on, boy?" Otis stood there for a moment. Then he took a few steps over to a dirty basketball jersey that Michael had thrown on the floor. Otis sniffed the shirt, then started to knead it with his paws. He purred. "This seems like a good place to sleep. Not too quiet, not too loud. It's cozy. It's close to the boy. I'll just lie here for a little while." "You purr almost as loud as you yowl," Michael said. Otis's purring sounded like it was part of the song. It had the same easy rhythm. Michael laughed. Otis didn't notice. He curled up on the shirt and closed his eyes. Michael turned off the light and closed his eyes. When Michael woke up in the morning, he felt better. He had actually slept. He remembered Otis yowling around 5 or 6 o'clock, but Michael had fallen back to sleep. Had Otis slept in his room that whole time? Maybe it was the music, Michael thought. He remembered Pete saying that Otis had napped while he practiced guitar. Soft music and a sleepy, quiet cat. Michael thought that might be a connection, but how could he find out for sure? It was time to make a plan.